get ready to dive into the rhythmic realm of the Drumheads podcast, where beats meet banter. Whether you're a drummer or just love a good music story, Drumheads is your backstage pass to the world of drumming and all things in between. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and please remember to subscribe. And now here's the show.
We can go ahead and get started if you don't mind.
I'm ready.
Cool. So I'm going to start with the basics here. How did you get started playing? Were you a drumline kid or?
Oh, man, are you going all the way back? Okay.
Yeah, I want to start from the beginning.
Oh, man, okay. Oh, shoot, you got to go all the way back to, like, I'm 8 years old and it's Ed Sullivan, you know?
Who was on when that impressed you?
Beatles.
Okay.
You know, I mean, like, and my sister, who's a year or so older, was, you know, she lit up like a Christmas tree because, you know, that's what all the girls did. In 63. And I'm kind of looking at this going, what? You know, because, you know, I mean, I listened to the radio a lot as a kid back then, but it was everything from, you know, Frank Sinatra to Wilson Pickett to Elvis. You know, it was like, it was the radio, just AM radio. And,
right.
And
there wasn't really a genre back then.
No, there was no such thing.
It was just music.
Yeah, there were, as Buddy Rich said, there were two kinds of music, good and bad, you know.
Yeah, right.
So I was just floored at what I was seeing, you know, on the, you know, I think I'd already I was playing violin. And
Were you really?
Yeah, you know, I was like in the first grade, I took violin lessons, but I washed out. But seeing my sister react so viscerally to these four dudes, you know, I remember thinking like, well, you know, and then the next day I went to school and every kid is pulling their hair over their ears, you know, I mean, it changed the world overnight.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure.
And I wasn't really freaking out about the Beatles yet, but then when the Stones came on next, I lost my shit. I lost it. Like the Stones to me were like, they were like the guys I wanted to be when I grew up. You know, they were like, they looked like the guys like the tough guys, the guys who smoke cigarettes and you know, I'm just a little kid and they look like the guys who got the girls and, you know, and they were like all those, everything you wanted to be when I grew up as a kid. I wanted to be that guy. And then after that, and then I think I started taking drum lessons right about, I think when I was 8. So we've been around at the same time. I took my.
So you immediately went to drums. Ringo and Charlie stood out for you?
Yeah. And then unfortunately all the teachers back then they were all old jazzers. So they played traditional.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to play drums, you know, there's only one way to play drums, you know, and as far as they were concerned.
Right.
You know, and there were really rock and roll wasn't even a thing. It was like, you know, whatever. And so I took a few years of drum lessons on a practice pad, learned all my rudiments. And I was, the teacher I was working with for years was great. He was like a symphonic percussion player. And he wanted me to be that guy. He was teaching me to play mallet instruments and, you know, marimba, xylophone, timpani, everything, and learn your rudiments. But he had a drum set in the corner, and for 2 years I just stared at it and just going, when do I get to the drum set? And he was like, no, you know, you learn to play drums first. And then finally I told him when I got my NARD, which back then was the National Association of Rudimental Drummers. You got a diploma when you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you learned your 26 rudiments, your 13 essential, and there were 26. You learned them to the right BPM on a metronome. Old Seth Thomas, you know, you on your pad. I guess I'm babbling, but it was. I said I want to play the drum set, and he basically dismissed me. He said, and I think his quote was, "I thought better of you. You know, if all you want to be is a drummer, then I think we're done."
Wow.
I know. It kind of freaked me out because he said, you know, you've got, basically he was saying that that's beneath you. He didn't think rock and roll culture was a thing. He was like, I was teaching you to go play in the University of Florida band and teaching you to go become a symphonic player. I wanted you to be a real percussionist. And the fact that I wanted to be a drummer was laughable to him. So
did that take the wind out of your sails, or were you even more determined to play?
no, I didn't give a shit. I mean, once you said that to me, I was already so eaten up, and I was already probably in the school band, and I was probably sneaking home the concert bass drum and a snare drum, hodgepodging a mutt drum set, borrowing other, it was like,
Borrowing.
yeah, and I, the crash cymbals from the school band became my hi-hats, and so I think it was all like, it wasn't like it is today. You didn't call Sweetwater and get a drum set,
Right.
And your father and mother weren't going to pay for that. That's ridiculous. Yeah. You go to Sears and you go to, and you look in the book and they, your dad would go, well, a speed pedal is $28. How many lawns are you willing to mow, boy? And it's like, so, you built your first drum sets. And that was the genesis of the word trap kit. The genesis of the word trap is for contraption, because it's it is usually a hodgepodge of weird. I mean, what you see today, that's NASA compared to like what most drummers start with. And then, you had guys would come over. One guy would have an electric guitar. You get a Silvertone out of the Sears catalog, and, the guitar that had the amp built into the case. And, you'd learn a riff. You'd learn Louie Louie. Nobody could figure out the words, so it didn't matter. You know? And so there was just like that. And then, now I'm probably 12, and I'm starting to get a little knack for the drums now. I'm probably, I can keep a beat. So a couple guys that are older than me, which, 4 or 5 years older is a big deal. But I would get in their bands. Like, when I was 13 or so, I was already playing in like bands, and they had a warehouse, or we practiced in the living room. And, so this is really all I've ever done ever, is be a musician and hang out with other musicians, get in trouble.
Were you still taking lessons back then?
No.
Or had you moved on?
Once I learned my rudiments and the guy dismissed me, it was like nobody really taught me how to play a drum kit, which is good and bad, because it can be misinterpreted as having a style if you don't know what you're doing,
Yeah.
So, but now I realize, boy, it would have been, but that really wasn't even available. There were like 2 drummers in the town I grew up in.
Where were you?
Gainesville, Florida.
Okay. I'm from Melbourne originally, so
cool.
Yeah, I get it. So you started playing, and then did you just continue floating through different bands before Tom Petty, or was it like a straight arrow sort of thing?
No, those guys were in a different band. We were in the town I was in. There were like 2 or 3 pretty good bands at that time. I was in one of them. We were getting a lot of work, frat parties, university gigs, we were working bands. Tom and Ben and Mike were in a working band. They were very good. And the bass player from the Heartbreakers, Ron Blair, was in another band, very good. And these were all working bands. So we all knew of each other. And we were probably the youngest guys. But sub in Tom and Mike and Ben's band, their drummer would, for whatever reason, not be available, or I don't know. And they would just say, come on down to Tampa. We're going to play. We got a bar gig down there for 4 days. Come on down. And so, by then high school was already like, if I get D's, I'm happy,
Yeah. Yeah, because you had already set your sights on other things.
I was out. I think by 17 or 16 or 17, I had already mentally left the building. Like I was going to either, make it, whatever the heck that meant, or live under a bridge. I really was that, there was no backup plan in my life. I never went to college. I barely got a GED. I sort of squeaked by in a laboratory school that gave me credit for playing in a topless bar and gave me credit for making a trip to LA, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so I was feral. You know, my parents had split up, and I was living in band houses when I was a little boy, and it was great. I mean, I wouldn't advise it today, but I think it really does create an opportunity to express yourself and exploit yourself because you have no other options.
Yeah.
You know, like go figure it out, you know?
So when did the Heartbreakers start? When did all of that start? Shortly after that, or?
Yeah, I remember I referred to those other two bands in Gainesville at the time. They had already made their pilgrimage to LA. Those bands had gone to LA to get record deals, whatever they could do. All of them pretty much imploded when they got to California. So everybody from that would become the Heartbreakers was available. And I went out there alone just to go measure yourself. You know, I was like, you know, it's either going to be New York or LA. And my mom said, you should go to LA. They got better weather, you know? And it was, so I met the guys pretty much on the street in LA. I met what would become the Heartbreakers, but I knew them all from back then.
Yeah.
So we all met up, you know, in varying, like, hey, what are you doing? Oh. And then Benmont, the piano player, fell into some free time at a very nice recording studio. And he called me and said, would you come and play on my demos? And I called Ron and he called Mike, and Tom showed up to play harmonica and went, that's it. There's our band.
Wow. That's really cool. Did your influences change as you went on, say after Charlie Watts and Ringo? Did as you got better playing, were you discovering new talent that influenced you in any way?
No, I was probably, well, you know, Simon Kirke was always big in my, you know,
from Bad Company.
Yeah. I mean, and all the way back to the Free Live album just killed me. And those guys that all played, it was funny. They all played 4-piece kits and they were all minimalists. And they all had a sound and a vibe. And I just remember thinking like, that's really, I'm never going to be a technical chops monster. That's not going to ever happen. And also the bands that I loved, that wasn't the drummer's job.
Right.
You know, every band that I loved, the drummer kept a beat, and the sound of that drummer, like if it was the Kinks, it was Mick Avery's. If it was Free, it was Simon. It was Charlie and the Stones, Ringo. You know, it was Keith Moon and the Who. It was like, you know, each guy was the right guy in that band.
Right.
And that was they felt irreplaceable to me. You know, like when you know, when Bonzo died, it's like I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. They all did. We went, you don't have Led Zeppelin without Bonzo. You know, like
right.
And so to me, it was maybe somewhere between ego, fear, lust for being noticed. I just wanted to be the right guy in the band.
Yeah.
You know? So if the guys in the band were all turning around and looking at me and laughing and smiling, it was Miller time for me.
Yeah.
You know?
So going back to like we were talking about the trap kit. I have a friend, a drumming friend, a touring guy. He's always told me that in his opinion, the drum set are separate instruments that come together. You know, what is your feel on that? What is your, because I mean, you like with your kits, I play the same way, one up, one down. And, you know, I never really thought about it until he brought that up to me. Do you feel like that the kit for you is like this separate instruments and you're bringing it together under the premise of a song, or, you know, just playing with somebody? Have you ever thought about it that way? No.
And honestly, that's a different philosophy than me, which is not saying good or bad. My philosophy is the kick, snare, and the hat are the drum set. Like if you were to have to, like, those are the things I probably wouldn't want to be without at a gig, you know?
Yeah.
Now, Keith Moon played without a hi-hat. I never knew how he did that. That was fantastic. It was fantastic how he could keep a beat, and he sure did. But to me, the kick, snare, hat are that's the Trinity, if you will.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah.
So if you can sell it there, and your singer is your North Star, like that is the only thing that, like, my wedge of truth as a drummer, it goes right to the singer's butt. So if that guy, if he turns around and gives me the yay, but if he turns around and goes, what? That means I missed. So the singer is the North Star. The song is the whole picture. And how you fit in and getting on the record is always a trick when you're a drummer. Like, sometimes you really think you need to bite with a lot of venom, but actually to make the record work, sometimes you have to do very little. And when you listen to like a record like Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, or Hold On, I'm Coming, or Respect by Aretha Franklin, or Honky Tonk Woman, there's only one crash cymbal. It's the end of the song. It's like, so you kind of have to learn. It takes a long time. It took me a long time to realize what you don't do is more important than what you do.
Right. So
seeing the drums as individual instruments, I don't even really know if I see the tom-toms until they're requested. Like in crash cymbals, I exploited that really early a lot, but really it became like, mostly was just for my own satisfaction because I thought it looked cool, like if I was splatting away or something. But the truth was, when you heard it back, my first reaction when I went in the studio would always be like, boy, that guy's writing a check he can't cash, is what it always sounded like from me and the drummer. When I hear myself play, I go, why doesn't he just write a check he can cash? Which is just, give me a pulse,
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I can get the singer to dig me, and I really, because there was a lot of discussions about bass players and blah, blah, blah. All the bass players I got to play with have been fantastic. They all just took me on and made it work. Whether it was Ron Blair or Howie Epstein or Duck Dunn or Bobby Glaub, I've just been embraced by bass players that and currently in the new band I'm in, this Brian Patterson, same thing. We don't even talk about it. We just look at each other and go, I felt pretty good,
Yeah.
And that's
some of the recent people I've had on, they've talked about how it's the drummer's job to drive the band. Do you mentioned being the kind of the North Star as the singer. Do you believe that the drummer's role is to push the band and kind of let them follow your lead? And I'll give you an example. In my opinion, Phil Rudd, you're playing on Breakdown. Do you feel like that's kind of your job, even though you haven't probably thought about it before?
Push is a tough adjective. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would probably say massage. Is my job to massage the band and make them feel good?
Votes of confidence and pat them. Come on, let's go.
No, it's more like when you're in a good band and they're rocking, usually everybody's bouncing like they're on the same trampoline.
Yeah.
Like there's this cool little thing that used to happen with the Heartbreakers where I knew that we were playing well because they all would just bop. It wasn't like histrionic. It was just this little boink, 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 boink. And it was like, this is great. It's like having a team of horses and they're all working.
Galloping, yeah.
Yes. And I love that in a band. I love that in the band I'm in now. Occasionally I get them. I try not to tell them because then I don't want to make them aware of it. You know what I mean? Because then they might be self-conscious, but I'll go because they'll say, how'd that feel? And I go, it looked great. Because it's like, you could just see them. They were all letting go. And that's, I think the drummers, it's a weird thing, the groove. There's an urgency in a groove. And there's also relaxed, confident, like, you that hold on loosely thing, it's like,
Yeah.
It's a really fine line, and the groove is a balance beam, sometimes no wider than dental floss, man. It's like, and you got to really, it's a tough place. And just because you're in a groove doesn't mean everybody is in your same groove. So that's like you mentioned Phil Rudd, perfect example, or Levon Helm, or those guys that they find the place in that group where everybody wants to play with them.
Yeah.
And they allow the freedom, and they leave the hole in the donut. They leave that big hole where it's like, oh, you almost hold your breath till the next downbeat. It's like, it's beautiful. And that's a lost art, with the computer now. Everything's, you can make a perfect track. And it's, as I think it was said to me by Merle Haggard, yes, Dan, that's perfect. Perfectly awful.
Good old Merle. Once the Heartbreakers started with Tom, you just mentioned Donald Dunn, who is a renowned bass player.
Yeah.
Were you finding yourself as you guys kind of grew, because you had a level, and I think you guys reached an even higher level thanks to MTV and some of the videos that y'all did back then. Did you find yourself playing with a lot more people like that, like established studio guys like Dunn or anyone else, or was it solely the band still?
I wasn't a highly prized session call, I got a few calls and they were great, and they were always fun, but I have a very narrow lane as a drummer, and I if you don't want my lane, probably best not to call me, because I wouldn't consider myself to be versatile, and I've since my tenure with the Heartbreakers, I've had the pleasure of being on the other side of glass and producing other drummers, and they're fantastic. And I think I've produced some of the best, or been co-producing with guys like Henley, and I've watched the process that these amazing session players bring, all the way from Jeff Porcaro, to Greg Bissonette, to Kenny Aronoff, Greg Morrow in Nashville. These cats are, you watch them and you go, oh, if I knew, that would have been nice to know back then. But when you're transmitting, it's hard to receive. So when in the 20 years that I was playing drums professionally, I wasn't listening to the drums like I listen now.
Do you think you've picked up, a lot of people say they're constantly learning, constantly picking up stuff. Did you find that anywhere along your current path or in the past that you picked up different things from different people?
Oh, Lord, yes. I mean, every day. I mean, I've got a studio that I'm in right now. I learn something every time I sit down behind that kit and record. I learn, and usually I relearn the first lesson. Leave all this stuff that you're trying to do by the wayside. And as Denny Cordell said, they'll always misinterpret you as tasteful.
Nice.
And it's funny, like, I've watched the Jeff Porcaro session, watched a couple, and to see how quickly he learned the beat, not the moves, not all the fancy stuff.
Yeah.
But he learned where that pocket was, and he felt that within a bar. I mean, almost by the time the count off, it was like you could already see him like, all right, this is where I got to firm it up. Like almost any schmuck can do a stupid pet trick and play a pyrotechnic fill, but can you get this beat where it feels amazing? Like, watching him do like New York Minute or Dirty Laundry or a Toto track, and you just go, this is magic. And it's not because he's blowing thunder, which he usually did in the fade. You know what I mean? He'd light himself on fire, and you just go, but the groove and the sound and that's what the greats have. That's what like Bissonette has. He gets right into it's a piece of business by the time the fourth click stick, it's already a piece of business. That first downbeat is not temporary, it's not like confusing. Vinnie Colaiuta, got to work with him. Ridiculous, but yeah, he's got a million chops, but he could literally put one hand behind his back and sell it to you and make it. And so drums to me are, they're very primitive. They're very primal still. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with not being a great drummer. I just want to be a good drummer in a band. That's all I want to be. And that's a distinction with a difference.
Are you going back to your roots, I guess, anytime? Are you still practicing rudiments and getting out the pad, or do you still do things like that?
Well, I keep mentioning his name, but Bissonette will send me, the sticking pattern for the blushta, and I'll try to learn that, and then 2 years later I might get it, but he learns these things in 2 days. And it was the same with, there's a Steve Gadfill he turned me on to, and I spent 2.5 years learning one Steve Gadfill, and I still don't know if I can use it in a sentence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's I've embraced my limitations, and I've decided that, at my age, it's okay. It's okay not to be. It actually freed me up, as a wise man once said. Once you realize you're never going to be any good, you can start to have a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I started playing on a whim, lied to some friends in high school that I could play drums, and learned by playing air drums. Yeah. And, I got to a point where the first band I was in was a Journey cover band. I always talk about it, but, I think for me, to go along with what you're saying, was that the freedom came when I realized that I am not going to be a Neil Peart. I'm not going to be, someone like that. And I'm not Mike Mangini or whoever, Mike Portnoy, whoever you want to name. I realized I'm not going to be that player, that my strength really comes from a player similar to yourself or a Picaro, to where you just lock in that groove and let the music breathe and let it flow.
Well, also develop your own style,
Yeah.
Whatever it is. Even if it's ridiculous, even if it's somebody finds it, like, Slim Jim Phantom, he played drums standing up,
Right.
in the Cats. Good for him. You know what I mean? My first reaction was like, that's not drumming. And then, after I watched him play a few times and we did some shows, I went, no, that's drumming exactly like he's doing it. Perfect.
Yeah.
That's great. So you have to realize it's infinite. And, but yeah, if everybody wants to be Buddy Rich, guess what? It's not going to happen. And there's nobody's going to replace Buddy Rich.
Right.
Ain't going to happen, dude. So,
yeah.
But I love that I get to do this still. That's how I look at it. I'm extremely grateful.
How are you spending your time now? Mostly producing or doing a little playing or both?
I've got a new band.
Yeah.
And I'm loving that. And that's
Speaker Wars.
That's taken a lot of my time and a lot of energy. And writing is pretty much what I do, probably 4 or 5 days a week, every other week. So I set myself up. I've got a schedule, and I come out to work, and I make music, and I try to write songs, lyrically, and I try to be creative and joyful and healthy, so
yeah.
To me, that's the reward from having played those thousands of shows and living on a tour bus. It's like, now I can follow my bliss, which is essentially what I do.
How often are you guys writing songs continuously? Or, you mostly, but are you continuously writing? Are you, playing, getting behind the kit and playing a certain pattern or something, and then saving it and going back and saying, hey, I got this pattern, I can use this for this song? Are you doing things like that?
No, I usually start from the songs from a very old school, like, what do I want to say? I don't even sit down and make music unless I've got a thought lyrically. There's got to be something that I want to say. Otherwise, it's just a series of notes that it just sounds like R2D2 to me, until like, it's like, I want to hear the message. I want to hear the human confess something or say something or make me smile or, it's like a movie with no sound, without words. So I usually work until I find something like that to work on. Then it takes me weeks to massage into what I think is a workable demo. And that requires drums might take me days to get the right sound, and I'm wearing all the hats, I'm wearing the drummer hat, the producer hat, the engineer hat, the songwriter hat, the arranger hat. So it's like, I'm not in a hurry anymore. I take my time and I enjoy the process. And I love being creative. It's great. And if somebody joins me, even better. If somebody I respect or admire comes in to do it with me, perfect.
Have you, with you wearing the different hats now, do you feel like it's made you an even better player? Because you're listening to so many different styles and, you mentioned working with Henley and everybody else, but has that influenced you continuously? Do you find yourself still being influenced as a player?
Absolutely. Oh no, continuing education is the whole thing. If you're not learning and a little freaked out, you just pack it in. I'm usually a little intimidated by the process because I'm trying to do something I've never done. And it's scary. Like when you get behind a kit and you go, I don't know how to sell this. This is interesting. How do I sell it in my, I won't say dumbed it down version.
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
It's like, and then I'll go back and listen to a record by, Eric Burden and War, like even Cisco Kid or something like that. And I'll go, man, I want to figure out that layers of percussion and all of that. I want to learn. And so, I just go down rabbit holes occasionally where I go, I'll hear a song and I'll go, well, rather than be intimidated, why don't I try to break the code?
Have you ever been in your car or something to hear a song and like that beat will stick with you and you come home and try Absolutely. To knock it out?
Oh, it's extraordinary. Even Dance Hall Days by Wang Chung. What a great drum program. It's like, it's just a beautiful shuffle. It's like, but it's a new way of doing, I really do try to keep a fairly open mind. I try not to be a get off my lawn kind of guy, although I have a hard time working sometimes with people half my age because quite frankly, I think they're lazy.
You think they're too dependent on technology?
Yeah, they want me to hook it up. It's like, they'll play the drums 2 passes and say, you got enough? And I'm like, that blows my mind. Like, don't you want to be good? Or at least, I know how hard it is to be good. And it's not just an accident, you just sit down and you make a hit record. I mean, it does happen occasionally, sure. But the reality is the guys that, the Wrecking Crew, Hal Blaine, he's a mofo, it's so, I mean, when I look at a kid who's older than Hal Blaine when he's making the Beach Boys record and he's telling me to hook it up, and I'm thinking, man, you're not big enough to get on the ride, man. You got to be a little taller than that, I got to go grab my, give me 1 second. I got to plug my computer in.
Sure.
And all the people I admire that I've gotten to work with, none of them are lazy. They're all hard workers, man. Everybody that I've ever admired and made a good record with, shoot, they're amazingly disciplined, have tolerance for repetition. You know, like they're not just, well, they're professionals.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was it?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, Steve Lukather had that great line. Before there was Pro Tools, there were pros.
Oh, wow. I've never heard that. That's a great line, though.
I think I heard him say that. Yeah, it's great. And he's another guy I get to work with. It's like, I mean, I'm never going to be in that weight class. He's, you know.
Oh, yeah, that guy's, he's like God level status on the guitar.
I refer to him to his face as my John Coltrane. You know, you're that guy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm never going to get to that, you know, but we get to write songs together, but I don't get to play instruments with Steve Lukather.
Yeah.
You know,
I was a big Porcaro fan from back in the day, just because of his playing with like Boz Scaggs. And, you know, that one album was just unbelievable. And I'm fortunate enough, a friend of mine was Pearl artist relations guy. So I was able to get one of his snares one time. But yeah, you mentioned working with him. Did you actually, or you mentioned knowing him, did you actually work with him in any capacity? What was that like, if so?
Jeff?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff. Well, I became friends with Luke, and I got him, and Danny Korchmeier was producing a Toto album, and he called me in to write lyrics for one of their songs. So that's how I met Jeff as a writer. And then I met Jeff in the studio with Henley when he came in to play on Don's records. You know, I would just be there. I was a friend of the family. So, but Jeff was always really dynamite to me. You know, he's just kind and soulful and you know, but just a joy to watch. And so it's the highest compliment you give anybody. He made it look easy. Yeah. And it ain't. So, you know, he was John McEnroe good, you know, like he could make everybody look like they could play drums, you know, but when Jeff decided to really play the drums, stand aside, because it was fantastic. And the sound he made, the sound of Jeff Porcaro's drums. And I wouldn't care if it was oatmeal cans. He'd sound like Jeff Porcaro, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. I've had friends like that you could give them a string and a broomstick. Yeah. And they could play it and it sounds good. Yeah, sort of thing.
That's beautiful.
I mean, it's, you know, I go back and watch some of his older instruction videos and just try to pay attention the way, I mean, even simple things like the way he holds his sticks and
exactly,
you know, the ghost notes, you know, and that sort of thing that he would play. And, you know, a lot of people, you know, he played on, I mean, Toto came out of Boz Scaggs' album. Mm-hmm. That band was because they were all session guys at the time. So, I mean, a lot of people don't know he played on those sort of albums. He played on a bunch of stuff.
No, Jeff Porcaro, all music. And remember, Jeff was gone by 40.
Yeah.
So the width of his music was like, my God, you know, it's
I mean, it's exactly. Yeah. Well, tell us about your new band. What's going on with Speaker Wars? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's John Christopher Davis, Texas boy, singer-songwriter. We met in Nashville years ago, and we started writing together. And we amassed a lot of songs over the years. John had a solo career in Texas, so I was just, in my mind, just writing songs for John. Like, hey, you like him? Come on. He'd come down here and we'd build our tracks. And then during COVID, I think when we were all losing our minds that first 6 months, you know, literally we're setting fire to our groceries. We were burning our laundry. And I just realized that, well, if this is my new reality, I'm going to have to get busy. And because I can't just sit here and watch the world end. So I called a lot of my engineer friends that I had relied on for years, because I was never a Pro Tool engineer. I could in the studio, but I always had somebody doing my bidding, you know? So during that first year, I just really decided I'm going to learn how to run a rig. I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to be hell or high water. You know, I'm going to be able to turn it on, record, and edit and make records. So, because this might be all I get to do for the rest of my life is sit in my room. So during that process, I got pretty good at it, at recording. And fortunately, you could still get your hands on equipment. You could still buy, and sell, and trade. And
so let me interject something here. You just mentioned stay in your room. Have you ever thought about you just came full circle from when you started learning how to play to what you do now? How it's kind of it's you've gone back to being in a room with your instrument, and which I'm saying is Pro Tools. Have you ever thought about that you came full circle with that?
It's never been wasted on me, because for me it was always a and I ended up building yes, I agree. Right. And then it became, even in the process of doing that, I realized the room I was using wasn't fun enough. So I went ahead and started designing a new room, had one built that took 3 years to build. And,
wow.
And it's been really fun, like to actually have like a gym, you know, this is where I go to work. And, but yeah, it is full circle. And then during that COVID experience, John Davis, the singer-songwriter I was referring to, he decided, like, well, why don't I just come down to Florida? It's just the two of us. We'll get our shots. We'll take our tests, you know, so we don't kill each other. And he would come down here and we worked on material. And then sort of offhandedly, he kept saying, well, why don't you come out and play? Why don't you get in a band with me? And I'm like, dude, been there, got a belly full of it. And he pestered me to the point where I just finally said, well, sure, let's make a record. And then we met another guy who curated our material named Mike Pasterzi, because we had buckets of songs and completed the demos that we were making during COVID were records. You know, they were no excuses. Wasn't like I was as good as I could do. And so Mike Pasterzi said, let me pick 10 songs that I think make a record. And he mastered that and did the assembly, which is a big job, you know, to take these songs that over years that were recorded piecemeal, and he made it all sound like it all came in the same cab. And that's a big gig. And so over time, it just started to evolve. We just figured, let's just make a band.
Yeah. Do you still draw on your influences with this new stuff? Probably
less than I used to. Now like I said, I just follow the catnip, you know, like I just, whatever feels good. Yeah. Whatever feels good, I'm going to follow it. And also being in a band, you don't, you have to give up a little of your voice. You have to say, look, part of this is egalitarian. I have to acknowledge there's other people in the room, and let me see what they're thinking. Because my first reaction might be like, no, it should go then. But never be mad at a guy with a good idea. That's another lesson I've learned. Always embrace whoever's got the hot hand in the room, even if it might not be somewhere you don't want to go. Let them go. It's like, let's find out. I didn't even see that coming. Like I was going left, you're going right. Let's go right. And and never in an accusing way. I don't like that, being in a room where you're going, well, I told you not to do that. It's like, that's not what creativity is all about. Creativity,
right?
It's like love. It's like, why do you fall in love? I don't know. Felt good. So that's what music is to me today. It's absolutely just whatever keeps me interested for as long as it can. That's the song I like best. I like the one that's got my attention, you know. Yeah. Ooh, that one's got my, you know, and it's really fun. But yeah, occasionally you do, like you brought up Phil Rudd. What would Phil do? You know, occasionally I do that. Or can I try to do what Charlie would do? Yeah, I can try. I just sound like an idiot because he's so good, but I can try, you know. or Ringo. Always, you always go, is that a Ringo-esque thing to shuffle that fill there? That's cool,
Yeah.
It's like,
And, from everything from the way Charlie Watts could just that, where he lifts up the stick. Yeah, that. And they played here many moons ago, but I was doing concert security for them. And I was on the backstage area and was watching Charlie warm up. And he changed up a china. He uses that one china as a crash. And he kept going back and forth. And I'm sitting there thinking, God, just pick one. Just, freaking pick one. And then the more I sat there and watched him, I started thinking, I'm going, who am I to tell you to pick one? He knows what he wants and he deserves it because of all the years of playing and, the hits they've made and the tours they've done. If he wants to choose between these two different Chinas, just do it. Because at the end of the night, it's going to be the Stones. It's not going to be Charlie Watts. It's going to be the Stones.
Whatever makes you feel like you're the drummer in the Rolling Stones, why don't you do that?
Yeah. Has your kit changed since you started? I mean, I know there's been different variations of it, but has it changed very much, you think?
Not really. I got a bigger bass drum now with this new company I'm with, Dixon. Greg designed the kit for me, and I've got my old Ludwig stash that I still got. I've got a kit that's a what was it called? A downbeat. It's a 2012.
Oh yeah.
And it's got the piccolo snare. That's a cool kit. Then I've got a set of super classics. It's the 13, 16, 22 with the Jazz Fest snare. That's a nice kit too. And then the Dixons that Greg designed for me are a 24, which is a big bass drum for me, but it's a little deeper. It's an 18. It's got a really nice sound, but it's a 10 deep by 12, which is interesting.
10 by 12, yeah.
And I wouldn't have picked that, 16 by 16. And then Greg designed me a cool little wooden snare. It's very similar to like a Noble and Cooley almost that goes with this kit. Very bright wooden. But yeah, he was the one that suggested, because I was playing old vintage stuff. That's all I was playing.
Yeah.
And then I got a call to go out with Mike Campbell's group, the Dirty Knobs.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really thought about playing live ever, but that was when I went like, wow, I don't really have a drum set, to go play.
Yeah.
What do I even do? And Greg was like, oh man, let's get you hooked up. Let's get you a good drum set. And but nothing's really changed. Like I have a picture of my first drum set that I ever bought, and that's basically my kit. It's got one extra crash cymbal.
So I've always heard this story, and it was kind of going through, it's gone through different channels and people that I know and stuff. But somebody told me that and again, this is a third-rate story, that you guys were touring with the Heartbreakers, and the opening act came up and wanted to sit behind your kit because they wanted to try to figure out why you were so damn good. And they said they sat behind it and they were like, this is the biggest piece of junk I've ever seen in my house. Like you were talking about contraption, like a trap kit. And you were like, how the hell does he make this sound like this? And they were talking about there was tape and there was like a locking wrench somewhere, or, they blew it out of proportion. But, I always like that story because I'm thinking, it's like that thing where, you knew Stevie Ray Vaughan playing. Regardless if you handed him a Les Paul or a Strat, you knew his playing. And it always hit me because that story always hit me. And I always mention it to other drummers, that it's your playing, man. That's what makes you as a drummer. It's your playing, is that feel and that technique, and that sort of thing. But I want to get back to.
Come on, who backed on me, man? Who was it?
I'm not going to tell you.
Come on.
No, I'm not going to tell you.
Come on. Come on, man.
No, I don't want to get in trouble because I'm going up to the Nashville Drum Show, and I know I'm going to see him up there, and I don't want, man, why'd you tell Stan that? I don't want.
It was one of our opening acts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's you'll know him the minute I say it. But
And he thought I had substandard gear, huh?
well, yeah, I mean, they were kind of like, it was one of those things. I think he was expecting this, just see like this pristine, like a DW level kit, and just, the drum heads are always clean and brand new. And he was like, man, I sat down behind it, and he said the heads hadn't been changed in what looked like a year, and then that night they're playing. He goes, and I'm sitting there thinking, going, holy shit, this guy's an amazing drummer, And I don't want to say it because I think it was kind of like an insult somewhat. And then it was kind of that thing where they thought, who is this guy? And then they sit down and like, holy shit, this guy can, freaking play.
Well,
so
see, what's so funny is I always had great pride in my drum kit. I thought my shit was happening, man. That's so funny. That's hysterical. Because I would have thought, wow, my drums, they're always like cool. They always look cool. They're always like ready to go. Or, that's funny that somebody actually went like, wow, his kid's scuzzed out. That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. So with the new band, are you guys going to do any touring with it?
We hope so. And this is where you can come in handy.
How's that?
Well, you can tell people about the band. Tell them.
I gotcha.
Tell them to go, hey, go to our website. We got to recommend.
Go ahead and list it. Because we're running into an hour. I don't want to keep you much longer.
No, I think it's speakerwars.com. We're on a label of Frontiers. We've got 3 videos out. Record comes out the 30th of this month, I guess.
Okay.
In a week. Let people know, please. It's like, this is how it works. I mean, in this day and age, the only hope we have is for you to turn your audience onto the band.
Yeah.
And there's no secret 1-800 number. It's like, and I'm so unsophisticated with social media, as you can imagine, that like, this is it. Tell a friend, tell a bunch of friends, buy the record, get us, help us get some momentum.
I don't think you can send out any text about it on your flip phone there.
I wouldn't even know who to call. It's like, we're up against cat videos that get 30 million views. I don't know, it's like, but yeah, I would love to go play because I got a good band. This is a good group of guys. They're fun. They're irreverent. They're not that impressed with me. It's perfect. They're having a great time. And and plus we have a great singer in John Christopher Davis. I would really like the world to hear this guy sing. It would be my pleasure. Like, hey man, sing for these people, because he's a delivery system.
Well, I'll put that up. I'll put those links up for you when I release the episode. So in closing, give us some words of wisdom.
In reference to what?
Whatever you want to do it in. Drumming, life. Well, because you guys, Tom Petty is a legend. You played in a legendary band. So you have to give, I would think that maybe, in drumming or life, however you saw it.
Well, let me see. In drumming, I think the best advice you could give someone is when in doubt, leave it out. And that will get you by. And then other advice I've gotten, which was really good, play what you can play, not what you wish you could play. There's a big difference. And learn the difference between what you wish you could play and what you can do. And do what you can do when you're in a band, because that provides stability. And don't be afraid of repetition. You have to be very tolerant of repetition in this world to do anything well. Whether it's love, cook, read, walk, and tune out distraction, and just remember, whatever you're doing, if you don't want to be doing that, do something else. Because I watch the world is so distracted today that I just think, like, be where you want to be. And as my dad used to say, put your head, your heart, and your ass all in the same place. And it's like, if you don't have all 3 of those in the same room, you screwed up. And it's like, that's a big deal for me. There's so many great pieces of advice I can offer that have been offered to me. They're not coming from
Yeah.
but I got a million of them that have come through to me that whenever I get in trouble, I think to myself, does that parable work? Well, that'll get me right out of this one. So, but from when in doubt, leave it out is key. Because you do have a doubt as a drummer. You're always going, hey, I wonder if I could stick a fill in. That's telling you right then and there, don't stick a fill in, because you're asking a question.
Yeah.
You're like, could I, would it work? But if you're on the rails, just stay on the rails for 3.5 minutes. Don't even, you don't even have to hit a crash cymbal. You can gap a hat if you can get away with that. You can bite a little, or you can maybe do a little drag, or you can ease your way in. But I mean, if you bring attention to yourself, 9 times out of 10, it's the wrong kind of attention.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's nowhere to hide as a drummer.
No, but you can definitely, if you can pat your foot for 4 minutes, you have done the job, brother. And it's like, and get that's the drummer's job. The beat. What's the beat? I'm still from that old school. Like, you got a good beat, we'll play a good beat and get the hell out of here.
Right. Well, I mean, if you look at what we were talking about just a minute ago, is if you look at all the great drummers, they are some of the most simplistic players in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And they did exactly what you're talking about. They just sat in the pocket and played.
Yeah, but you make it sound like that's easy.
True. Some people can't. Everybody talks about how they can't play along with AC/DC. Because of how simple Phil played, and he was almost always a half a step off from the time.
But his parts were brilliant, and where he left out things just created air and atmosphere and dynamics, and it created a sense of grandeur, and it was almost like you're going over the waterfall, like, oh, it's great.
That's a good analogy. I hadn't thought about it that way. Yeah.
So I love that. There's drama in that. There's real drama in playing a beautiful part, a well-crafted part, and being consistent. And he's not metronomic. He's better than that. He's better than metronomic,
Right. Well, Stan, thank you so much. Again, this was a real treat being able to talk to you.
Well, thank you.
After years of watching you and seeing you on TV, and I'm an MTV kid,
right?
So I grew up, being able to see you guys, and then, I still watch that video of you doing breakdown on, I think it was on Old Gray Whistle Test.
Wow, whoa!
I think so.
Okay. Really?
But yeah, it opens up with you playing the intro to Breakdown, because I always wanted, like, I'm a big beat guy. Like, I always wanted to learn, the shuffle from Picaro, and I wanted to learn that because to me it played with so much feel. So this was a real treat. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing this